Legislative Committee, a meeting of the Vallecitos Water District on Tuesday, November 7th at 4 p.m. Do we need a roll call? I don't think so.
I don't think so.
No
Everyone's
pledge?
here.
Okay. Okay, then we're in session.
Okay, well, if you guys want to open up with anything, if you want me to just jump in?
I'd like to open up with, thank you very much for sending the sheet out.
Okay.
It was a great comparison.
Just for the record, so they know, the sheet being the legal services proposal comparison chart, right?
That you, Mr. General Manager, put
Okay.
together, showing the five people we were interested in. Well, five, that's all five.
5 firms.
It's all five to show.
Yeah.
I thought it interesting, I got an email today, because I've learned with you, Mr. General Manager, I need to check my emails just prior to coming to a meeting, because you like to send them out on the day of.
Sometimes.
Which means
Yeah.
I gotta check it before I get here. So wherever I am, I go home, check my email, and then come here. Nosaman sends out a letter today, congratulating themselves for opening their new office in Carlsbad.
Yes,
But
saw that.
they're gonna have a party about it on the 15th of December, but it's not at the office.
At Torrey Pines.
It's at Torrey Pines.
I thought that was very odd.
Yeah, I said, I guarantee you that's exactly what they're doing.
Yeah.
It's because they realized they were the furthest ones away. So I thought that was interesting.
So obviously this comparison chart was just a kind of a high level, just some characteristics or factors that the committee may want to consider in determining how to move forward. I'm sure you all had an opportunity to look through the 5 proposals and have kind of drawn your own conclusions and made your own comments, but I thought this would maybe be helpful for conversations.
It was very helpful, and thank you also for putting it together. It captured the not being a lawyer, not being an expert at legal services and that kind of stuff. This was the kind of stuff that I was looking for and trying to glean from all the different proposals anyways. So this is very helpful, and we can kind of talk about what we want to do with this information, that this and other information. I do have a couple questions that about that wasn't in here, but
Okay.
about where we want to go next steps. But the one thing that I wasn't able to really be able to pull out of these, because a lot of it was kind of boilerplate and stuff.
Yeah.
But and I want to see maybe if either Director Martin or you, Glenn, had a chance, or if you guys did a better job at it than I was. But there's a kind of a wide range of hourly rates here, and it's not really clear though, like kind of what you get. What you get for the differences in hourly rates. They all have great teams with many years of experience. So why is there such a difference with one firm versus another in the hourly rates? And then the other thing I don't know if we'll ever be able to answer, but are some firms more efficient and don't have to bill as many hours for some reason? One reason or another. I don't know if there's a way to answer that or not, but
In my opinion, that's the single hardest thing to kind of ferret out. I mean, hourly rate's one thing to know, but yeah, the efficiency and how many hours will they charge, I don't know of a good way to do that, other than if we moved forward with considering these firms, we can do some reference checks and ask them how many hours. I think I sent out, previously we had sent out a comparison in legal costs, and more recently I sent out something for our current firm, what our last year's charges were, but
yeah.
and you can convert that to number of hours. But
If you
beyond
base that now, was this hourly rate from our current firm? Has this changed up or down from is the proposed hourly rate different than the current hourly rate?
it's the same as his quoted hourly rate. His currently hourly rate, he voluntarily took a 5% reduction. The rate quoted in his proposal does not include that 5% reduction. So it's going back to the full $185 per hour. Right now it's whatever, 185 minus 5%.
Okay. Okay, so I guess go back to my original question before we go on to the next thing. Were you guys able to kind of glean anything in there about what you might get? And maybe this will come out during the interviews when we interview when we're actually talking to them, we can ask them questions. But did you guys have anything that you were able to kind of take away from looking through the proposals that said, okay, this one right here that's the highest, I don't want to. I'm trying not to name names.
Maybe just give them
and give
whatever number on the
yeah,
list.
the 475.
Yeah.
You know, that's nearly. It's actually more than twice. You know, the lowest bid.
Yeah.
So why? And they seem like they're reputable. They do a lot of other water districts and ones that we have good relationships with and everything, and ones that we have a lot of respect for. So if they are the highest bidder significantly, it does beg the question on my part of other water districts that we have good relationships with, and I view them as being fiscally responsible districts. Why have they chosen to go with what seems, and I know their rates might be different than our rates, but let's just assume that they're comparable.
Yeah.
Why did they choose to go with one of the higher firms out there? And do they know something about what you get for all of that we just don't know yet, and we weren't able to get out of these?
So I certainly haven't talked to all the general managers in the county, but I have talked to quite a few, and all of them went through a pretty similar process. They prepared an RFP, reviewed proposals, and made a selection. I don't know their specific criteria in terms of were they weighting technical expertise, what much more than price, or where that factored in. And of the firm they selected, where did that firm fall on the rankings of proposals they received? So I don't know that level of detail.
Mm-hmm.
I do know that our current council has not applied to any of those other ones in recent proposals.
Mm-hmm.
So he wasn't part of the mix, so I don't know, whether his price would have been compelling to them or not. And the broader question of why are some of these firms being picked or at their rate, or is there a reason to justify their high rates? I don't know. I can say in the comparison chart that I have under the hourly rate column, that's the hourly rate for the general counsel. So all of these firms make use of other counsel and of paralegals and other staff.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't mean that every hour that you get billed is at this rate. So if you send something, if we selected one of these other firms and we had some work to do, the general counsel may do some, he may delegate some work to other lower paid attorneys, and some do.
I saw that in some of the
paralegals.
proposals where they actually listed out each of the individuals that were in their
Right.
firm and what their role and title was,
Yep.
and then what their hourly rate was associated with them.
Yeah, we wouldn't have any say over what work got divvied up. We would just say, hey, general counsel, we want you to do this, and then they would go back and they would break it down, and then they would send us a bill that says, general counsel this many hours, whatever counsel this many hours, paralegal this many hours, and here's their rate. One of the firms offered what they called a blended rate, which is it doesn't matter who we assign it to, on average this is what we're going to bill. I don't know if that's good or bad. It keeps us out of their business of figuring out why did you have
Yeah.
the lead counsel do that instead of the paralegal do that. Because
I saw that. I remember the same. But I forget which firm that was.
I'm trying to remember which one. I wrote notes in here.
Yeah, I do remember seeing that blended rate. It might have been this one. If I remember correctly.
It was the fourth firm.
Yeah, that's what.
Yeah, they show $345, and within the proposal it says it's a blended rate. And it's a lot of these rates are only good for a period of time. It'll say through December 31st of 2018. At which point in time there may be escalators, and that's all the art of the negotiation if you go to enter an agreement.
So then, the long story short is there's probably not a real good way, unless we just kind of talk about that during the Q&A with the actual bidder, right?
Right. It's tough because you ask questions, and you can almost predict the answer you're going to get when you ask the question. Are you efficient with your use of
Yeah, of
time?
course.
So it's hard to phrase a question in such a way that you really elicit a good response, an honest response. To me, if you know the answer, it's not even worth asking the question.
Well, the only question I think you can ask is the one that Jeff Scott gave us when we asked, because we have the bills to prove it. $173,000 for normal work during the entire year.
Right.
That's the number we want to know. What's the norm? We don't want to know about special things going on.
Yeah.
So I guess the question to ask to them is, for instance, Nossaman, what do Leave and I pay you a year?
Yeah.
I mean, give us an answer.
Or maybe better, how many hours did you bill for the support of their organization? So
Right.
so take Scott and Jackson, for example. Doing rough math, it's about 1,000 hours he billed us for. If you take this
Yeah, I
$175,000.
got 20 hours a week, half of his time in
Yeah.
life is
So
spent
it's
on
about-
us.
So it's half time with issues related to us.
And I don't think that's possible.
Yeah, so I mean that may be a question for in the interview to ask people, what do you think is a reasonable number of hours to support the general legal needs of the district. Now, can you hold them to that? I don't know. If you hire a firm and they say we think it should only be 10 hours a week, and they start billing for 20, we certainly when the invoices come in, we review them because they say, oh, it was on this case, it was for reviewing this ordinance and this contract question. We look it over and say, yeah, generally that's good. Is it my place to say, oh, an attorney should have only spent 3 hours on that, not 5 hours on
Yeah,
that?
we don't know.
That's tough.
Right. But I think the normal range of 4 of the 5 have experience in water districts.
Yeah.
So they should have a general knowledge of what they normally charge,
Yeah.
as Mr. Scott provided us with.
Right.
The first one, AALR, has absolutely no experience in the water industry,
Yeah.
and that's the only one, from my perspective, I'd kick out, not to bring back to the board,
Yeah. And
just to save them the time.
that's exactly my read on this. They make this reference to this unspecified water district, and without naming it, it doesn't help me. They seem to be really good at like if we needed a special counsel to go help us fight over a groundwater issue. That may have been a good firm for that, but to actually represent us as general counsel, I didn't see the depth.
Yeah.
And only 20% of us care about groundwater.
Well, and you couple that with their distance, and I don't think we're making
For me, it
decisions
was
right now.
the distance and lack of experience. I
Yeah.
I agree with you guys. I think that's a good path
But I
forward.
think the number to hound in on is Scott's number, $175,000 a year. Probably what we've paid him year in and year out, I don't know.
Yeah, it's close.
I'm just
Give or
saying.
take.
Is that June to June? Because he's not done with 2017 yet, if he's just
I
doing
think it was fiscal year, so I think it's the year ending
Okay.
June 30th of this year.
Yeah, but
I
I think
have-
he's been averaging that every single year, every 12-month
Well,
period.
and that averages out to take off vacations and holidays, 20 hours a week
Right.
is what he says he spends on strictly Vallecitos business.
Yeah.
Well, I don't want to say that seems like a lot, but you would know better. For the mundane business, that seems like a lot of time, even for an attorney drinking coffee and
Yeah.
reading the newspaper. 20
Yes.
hours a week seems like a lot of time.
And especially if you consider we're not his only client. I don't know all of his clients, but I do know he does
Where
gross
half is.
Yeah.
healthcare. So I mean, you know, it'd be curious if he's building them 20 and he's got another client he's building 20. And he's doing, I mean, there's always so many 20 hours in a week.
You know, this is not uncommon. Every place I've worked, you start looking at the attorneys and you know they have 10 clients and they're billing us half their time, and yet talk to the other clients and we're getting about.
Yeah, and even if he works 60 hours a week, I don't know if he is or not, but even if he is that week in and week out, I don't know. It sounds like that's something that might need to come up during the Q&A as well.
And I have a direct question about Mr. Scott. He's the only one we have history with. And I agree. The hourly rates, well, they can say $1,000, they can say $10. It's how much you're going to charge us.
Yeah.
And you don't know that until you go with them.
Right.
And if they want to keep you, they charge you correctly. If you're going to bounce on them, they're going to, they charge you incorrectly, you bounce on them.
Yeah.
You say, yeah. My question is the memo you sent out to us regarding Jeff Scott's numbers. And I have a couple of real serious questions. Okay. The cost for Lake San Marcos litigation totaled $31,394. That's during that 1 year?
Yeah, so this is not information that was provided by Jeff. This is information that we pulled internally from the invoices that we got. So I didn't do anything with Jeff to go over these numbers. I just pulled what we had records on and
Well, that
shared it
is
with him.
absolutely scary, seeing as it's another attorney that represents us. Jeff is just there as listing.
Yeah.
I mean, he has nothing to do with this lawsuit, other than education.
Yeah, so he attends a lot of the meetings as well to help us liaise with them. I think those numbers have gone down recently, but this is capturing a year in time.
Because someone's watching.
Yeah.
And then, based on Mr. Scott's conversation with Newland Sierra, I don't understand that. There were no Newland Sierra expenses after December 16th. All legal costs for Newland Sierra are being borne by Newland Sierra proponent. Well, prior to 2016, Mr. Scott was charging us, and after 2016, now Newland Sierra pays him.
I probably should have worded this a little bit better. He may be incurring time, but they're reimbursing him for his
At the
expenses.
time it occurred before that meeting in 2016, he charged us for it. I
Yes.
believe that was the meeting that the question was brought up with their attorney there saying, why are we paying you? He should be paying. Wasn't that
Right.
that whole conversation?
Yeah, and that's when he met with the attorney for Newland Sierra, and they worked out this deal that says you need to.
So in other words, we didn't have a hold harmless clause with Newland Sierra. Obviously.
Well, it's not a hold harmless clause, but duty to defend. It would be a different clause. I know what you're saying.
Up until that meeting, we were paying him. After that meeting, because of what came out of that meeting, he decided a good idea to have Newland Sierra pay him
Right.
because of what the board brought up. Not because he had already charged us $16,000.
Right. That's I agree with that read with the numbers that we're seeing here.
That's what
in my recollections of.
Yeah, I mean that's what I see. I'm like, really? So you charged us 16,000 because you didn't put in hold harmless clause? I don't know the technical word.
Yeah.
Which we're supposed to have in every contract that goes out of this place.
Well, I think you're confusing issues there. So the hold harmless would be if we got sued, they would have to defend us.
Right.
This is not a lawsuit issue right now. They're just processing a project. So and there's costs associated with that. So that's what he reached out to them and said, hey, you're putting the district in a position that those are costs that you should really incur. And Jeff could better address it, or another attorney could address it as a legal matter. But it's not quite the hold harmless clause you're thinking of, but it's similar. It's kind of a duty to defend.
But that $16,000 that we paid him was because he was diligently, for 6 months of the year, working with the Newland Sierra project, looking at the illegal matters. That's what it's saying.
That's my read on this, yes. And I don't think his attention to the project has lessened, it's just who's picking up the tab has changed.
Wow.
But that's a great question to put on that during the interview. If you,
Oh yeah, there's a bunch of great questions to ask him during the interview. But I read this and I went, really? I'm glad we had that meeting and we had the opposite attorney who really knows his stuff.
yeah.
Sit there going, I do that with all my clients. Like, Jeff? Okay. Anyhow, okay, I just want to make sure I was reading that one right. And looking at the other one, they all have plus and minuses, we can go over them. But I think, and I don't know, it's up to you, Mr. Chairman, but I think I'd like all 4 of these to come back to the board. Or we can bring all 5 back, I don't really care. But I think the Cerritos one, no demonstrated experience. It's like,
Yeah.
do we want to do that? I don't think that's a good idea. I don't think that's very prudent.
And to me, I thought I saw 3 strikes: no demonstrated experience, no knowledge of their general counsel, and their physical location. There's just none of those lead you to think that this is the firm.
Right, you don't know who it's going to be. It's unknown, the title.
Right.
BB&K, boy, they're all over the place, which I really do like. They go to the CASA meetings. They're in a sponsor of Aqua, and almost all the things we go to, there's sponsorships there. There's one guy that I've talked to a couple of times. His last name's Martin. I can't remember his first name, but I always call him Cuz, because
Yeah.
I have the same last name. I haven't seen him just lately, though.
And they also have local water experience.
Yeah. Yeah, and BB&K, that's a firm that does everything soup to nuts. There's no question. I mean, I know that Jeff likes to say we have 3, and that's good. It's been good for us. Nossaman, I think they're too far away. And that email I got today just made me smile. Because
Yeah.
I was thinking about what you said about the guy that said you should go and look at their office.
Right.
Make sure that,
Yeah.
'cause it's funny, they're doing this grand opening
Not at
December
their office?
15th. Yeah, not
Yeah.
now, and not at their office.
Yeah.
And they're doing it in Torrey Pines, which is a very expensive place to have
Yeah, it is.
a reception of any type.
But I mean, I'm not saying you're not suggesting that we don't invite them to the phase 2.
Who?
Nasaman?
Awesome.
You wanted to still bring the other 4, right?
Oh yeah, I think
Because I mean, I would be curious if they're
my recommendation.
taking them for their word, if they're sincere, and I have no reason to think that they're not. If and maybe they may just come out and say, you know, we have every intention to open an office in San Diego, contingent on us winning your business or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, Carlsbad is, you know, they'll be
Right.
close. So yeah, I'd like to hear what they have to say. I mean,
Right.
they're extremely expensive, but I would also, as we go through this process, try to, you know, I'm sure there's going to be at some point where we're going to contact references and
Sure.
maybe we can get some more information about the value that they might provide for that
Right.
expensive hourly rate.
One thing I did not include in here in the hourly rates, if you look through the proposals, and there was a question we prompted, it asked about alternative fee schedules. So they have the ability to either charge per the hour, or they can do what's called a retainer, which you pay them a certain amount of money, and it basically entitles you to a certain number of hours.
Right.
Kind of prepaid legals is what I would call it. If you do that, if you look at Nossaman's proposal, if you went the retainer based, it's down to about $3.75 per hour. And I think that was for like 30 hours, something like that, per month. I think it's per month.
Yeah, and you know what's really interesting, and this
I have a question.
is if they're basing that off of 30 hours a month, probably for a reason, right?
Yeah.
Because that's probably kind of, you know, your typical. They want to make enough bang for their buck, right? But also that might be kind of how they view, you know, a typical.
That's what it takes to support
Yeah,
this
and so
organization.
why are we doing 80 hours per month?
Yeah.
And one of the things that we can give for us, Glenn, too, is can you give us? And I remember a couple of years ago when Hal and I were on the finance committee, we had asked our auditor. Every year, we'd pick one area we want the auditors to kind of scratch the surface a little deeper. And I think this was even before your time, Glenn, but the first year that we did that, we asked the auditors to kind of scratch the surface on our legal billings, and then they came back and said, oh yeah, we looked into it and everything was fine. But, you know, I mean, I know it's a hard thing to audit because unless you're actually like, show me, account for every hour or whatever, you know, what do you do? But I'm really concerned about that 80 hours a month. And
Yeah.
that, I mean, especially getting to the point that I mentioned earlier where we're not his only customer, and one of his large customers who I happen to have a relationship with some of the board members and the executive director, I think is what it's called. You know, they do. I mean, it's a healthcare district, so there's a lot of. I mean, healthcare's got lawsuits all all over the place, right?
Yeah.
So there's got to be a tremendous amount of work there. So I don't know. I'm concerned about that. And so, anyways, what I was going to say, can you give us a 10-year trend of, or just what he's been charged? What's he charged? Yeah, just for. I'm less concerned about the extra stuff, but just give us like the general legal. And I think it has been trending at least the last 3 or 4 years around the 175-200 range. In my mind, I had the number closer to 250 for everything. So, which just seems astronomical. I mean, just.
We just asked Jeff, what does he budget us for?
I don't know if you guys have seen this. I don't remember if I've shared it with you. I thought I did, but if not, I can. We prepared an analysis comparing Vallecitos' legal costs with other surrounding districts. Have you seen that? So it has like OMWD and a few other districts. So I'm not going to comment on it. I don't remember it, but I'll dig it up and I'll share it with you all. Just so
Where
you
did
can
you
see.
get it?
We had made some phone calls. I think it was initiated before I got here. So I think they refreshed it after I was here, if my mury serves me. But the concept is trying to compare our legal costs with other surrounding districts. We didn't try to normalize it like dollars per account or dollars per mile or square mile. It was just Livenhain pays this, Vallecitos pays this. We stayed away from cities. We stayed away from agencies that had in-house legal staff. So we tried to stay with special districts that outsourced their legal support. And we were right in, my recollection is we were right in the ballpark. There was nothing that made us seem, we weren't high, we weren't real low.
You mean total spend?
I think it was total spend. I'm
Mhm.
not sure, and I want to be careful that I don't
But-
misconstrue.
I'd like to see it, but I'd also like to know when it was done
Yeah.
and who did it,
Yeah.
Okay.
And
because that does make a
because that
difference.
also, but that also, it actually kind of adds to the concern, because even if the total spend is, let's just use the round number 200,000 for Olivia Hain hypothetically,
Right.
and us and maybe another one. Well, we know who Olivia Hain's using for their legal services more than, and the quote came in more than twice as much as our firm is doing. So, it seems like it's a little bit of a shell game. Like, oh, I'm going to present these out as low, very, very low hourly rates, and I'll just make it up because I'm going to bill for more hours.
Yeah.
Because the total spend is the exact same or comparable to our peers, but we know that their hourly spend is significantly higher. It's
Right.
based off of these quotes. So I mean, it just, and it goes back even before your time, and the whole reason why, it's we should never have, as a district, allowed this particular service to go 30 plus years without going out through a competitive process like we're doing now, because after 30 years there's just there was concerns that the leadership was too tight, too close to each other, and you just have to go through these processes and get the board involved with it, just so there's some checks and balances.
Right.
And I'm not saying that anything's being done wrong or not, but it just, right now, it doesn't smell very good.
Okay.
There's something there.
So Director Martin, you said you want to know when it was prepared, who prepared it, like what process did we go through to gather the data? Okay.
Yeah. And it was prepared under your regime or prior regime?
I had no personal involvement in it. I know they had it, and then I remember an email coming through saying, here's the latest. So I'll have to dig into what that meant, latest, when did they review it, so.
Because that does make a difference, in my opinion.
Okay. Okay, well, maybe I can help us focus on number of firms we want to take through. Are we all it sounds like we're all on the same page that we're going to take the 4 bottom ones through. And by the way, these are arranged alphabetically. There was no preference. It was I just did it alphabetically. So we'll take the bottom 4 firms as the committee's
That would be my
recommendation.
recommendation.
Okay.
But take the bottom 4, and at the same time, well, the chairman will do it when he gives his report, but let them know if they really want to bring them back, they certainly can.
Okay.
This is our opinion.
Okay.
I wanted to see how a real committee works.
No jabs at other committees.
No, not whatsoever.
Okay.
Some committees make decisions.
I know, but not this one.
Okay, so that's good. And Mike, you're the chair of this
Yeah.
one, so you'll make some kind
Yeah,
of report out at the. Okay.
I'll give out the report of who we're going to bring forward, and I'll reiterate that we had a total of 5, and I'll note the one that we are not recommending bringing forward, and for the following reasons,
Okay.
and that we were we had consensus amongst the whole committee
Right.
that was the way to go.
And moving forward, what we'd like to do
Okay.
is come up with some dates that
Right.
the full board can meet, so we can do interviews with those 4.
And
Keeping in mind that December 20th, we'd like to have a decision.
Yeah.
yeah.
I think they need to be 2-hour meetings, because I think we need to give them at least an hour and a half. I think we got to give them at least a half an hour to 45 minutes to give their little dog and pony shows,
Right.
and then we need to have another 45 minutes to an hour to ask the questions, because that's really where
Okay.
the rubber's going to meet the road.
So we can budget between an hour and a half and 2 hours each.
Yeah, I would say 2 hours, and for you, the boards, I think they'd prefer to use 2 half-days
2 half days.
rather than
So
full
that's-
day. I don't
yeah.
care, it can be either one, but
Yeah.
give the board
Well,
that choice.
You guys
it
make
can't be for, yeah.
make the recommendation that you guys feel most comfortable with.
So that was, they either do it all 4 of them in one day?
Yeah.
No, I think we got to go with 2.
Okay, so that could be your recommendation,
Yeah.
and I
Yeah.
don't see the remainder of the board having a problem with that. It's just gonna become a scheduling issue. We need to find 2 half days.
And we need to find it so that we have a decision December 20th.
Yeah. Well, we have to talk about that too, because the December 20th meeting is probably gonna be canceled.
Right.
that was our thought. But if we need to call, either have a short
and-
meeting or,
Why? So what's the what's the rush?
Well, and, no, because that was, we wanted to have it in place for the first of the year,
yeah.
but also,
You know, it's going to be very similar to the.
We did show in this is the RFP. We did say we did give did give that date. We're talking about approving the contract and appointing the next legal counsel at the December 20th meeting. So there's still a lot of work to do. We still got to do interviews, select a firm, negotiate a contract,
Yeah.
work out all the language, and get that agendized. I don't think we're going to make December 20th to get the contract approved. It's just my guess.
Yeah. And then if we go with any other firm other than our current firm, I think there's going to be a bit of a transition period too. Just like there, you know, so I don't think it's going to happen like
Yeah.
the following Monday. Yeah, so.
And you may need to figure out as part of your deliberations, what is the role, if we don't go forward with using Scott Jackson as our general counsel, is there a role for them in the transition?
Yeah, I think there would, if we go, it's a big if, but if we go that way, I think, and what does that cost?
Yeah.
Because I think that if we do make a switch, I think it would behoove us to have them be part of that transition, and they're not going to do it for free.
Right.
There's going to be their hourly rate and so forth and so forth. So we're going to be paying two firms there for a short period of time.
but I wouldn't imagine, and I don't know this, but I wouldn't imagine it needs to be that much of a transition. There are attorneys that are already in this business. They've seen all the mundane stuff before.
Right.
They don't need to be brought up on Lake San Marcos. We have a different attorney for that. We can stop that milk truck. New and Sierra, it's a basic development agreement. We can stop that milk truck. So I mean, it can just be, here's the basics. I mean, but
Yeah.
But there could be some ongoing stuff with HR and other things.
There's just
that,
a lot of historical stuff that it would be tough to just lose access to the current council, but it's not impossible. There'll be a learning curve. They got to get up to speed, the new firm. They can either do that by talking with Jeff, or we can give them boxes of information, and you're going to pay $375 per hour for them to read through boxes.
probably less time going through boxes than talking to Jeff. Just a joke.
Yes.
That was a joke.
I'm not commenting on that.
That was a joke.
2 weeks per day.
so two half days to be determined, because that's going to be tough even for me to schedule. But we'll figure it
Well,
out.
it could be on
Saturdays, Sundays.
Saturdays as far as I'm concerned. I don't know if the board has a problem with that or not.
That's
I certainly
well,
don't.
that's just a
yeah.
coordination issue.
Yeah,
Who-
I mean, we
know.
can.
And I don't see any reason, I mean, truthfully, no offense, and I have all the respect in the world for Christmas. We're off Christmas Day. You know, the 20th, to me, doesn't seem like a golden, well, we've always canceled on the 2nd. Some people would like us to cancel November and December, I realize that. But there's no reason why we couldn't have one on the 20th. I mean, Christmas isn't until the following week.
I know, but the reality is, and this is just the practical aspect, there's going to be a lot of people missing that may be critical, depending on the type of item you wanted to bring forward. I'm going to be here.
Do we close
20th.
the week of Christmas?
No, we're open.
No, but-
it's pretty thinly staffed. There's a lot of people taking
A lot of
time.
people choose to take their
Yeah.
vacation time during the holidays. So.
Oh,
So-
no, I understand that. No, I definitely understand. You're gonna travel and.
I would
It's-
suggest that the
you
board
know,
not consider putting a big item on December 20th that requires a lot of staff there, because
No.
they're just not going to get it.
Well, I'm thinking for us to do what we have to do here.
Yeah. Well, this
we're
could
gonna
even
staff.
be.
Well, the
instead of-
interviews. Yeah, I do agree. I think to keep us on some sort of timeline, a reasonable timeline, we need to do the interviews before the end of December. Whatever day that might be. If it's not the 20th, then we got to pick a different day in December.
Yeah.
But I don't think we want to put. We don't want to allow the interviews to go into January.
I would suggest we get the interviews done by the end of November.
Even better.
Yeah, I think we should put that out there and say by the end of November, we're done with interviewing, and then the board needs some time to deliberate.
Yeah, we'll have to have
in
another
fashion.
meeting.
Well, some of us aren't here the last week of November
Yeah,
at all.
yeah. It may not work, Director Martin, but I think that would be a good goal. And I know Aqua's coming up, and
Yeah, there's a lot of
So-
time, people are gonna be spending a lot of time away from home already.
yeah,
Which is why I like December, because December, your staff is off, nobody's doing much. nobody's building anything.
Well, if we go early December, let's get them set up in November. They may not take place in November, but by the end of November, they'll be all scheduled.
Yeah, by at the 15th at our board meeting, that's when we need to have scheduled, right?
At this next Wednesday.
Next
you're
week's
talking
board meeting, yeah.
Yeah.
Who's scheduled?
Well,
By the board meeting next week is when we should, at that board, we should decide on the 2 days we're gonna have
Oh
this.
yeah, that's fine.
I think that may be difficult. It's worth a try. But so at the meeting next Wednesday is the first they're going to hear your guys' recommendation.
Yeah.
That of the 5, we recommend going with 4. We think we should do 2-hour interviews and only 2 per day, so we need 2 half days.
Yeah.
That's the first they're going to hear about that. So is the expectation that they'll pull out their calendars and be able to commit to half-day meetings at that meeting. I think that may not work, but we can try. And then the further complication, you may set up some time and the attorney firms may not be available. They may be in court, whatever.
Well,
day
that's
you
what I was
set
gonna
up.
say, is you give them 2 days, each one of them gets 2 days to decide which day.
Yeah, so there has to be a little bit of flexibility in here. Some people, and I'm not talking about our board members, some are more flexible in their schedules than others. So it may not be as easy as we think.
You're the other.
So,
Hey,
but I mean that's the reality. And some other people, aqua conferences, other committee assignments and things get in the way.
poker games.
What would you guys like to see in terms of attendance at the interview? And I'm not talking from the board or the district side, I'm talking from their attorney side. We definitely want their proposed general counsel to be there.
Yeah.
To me, and I'll take a little digression here, one of the most critical things is the fit. So we don't know who this person is. The biggest concern I have with these proposals, with the exception of Jeff's firm, I don't know these general counsels. I know the firms. I know other general counsels that work at those firms. I just don't know the person that they're proposing. So one of the things we want to ferret out there is, can I see myself working with this person on a weekly, bi-weekly basis, or to us almost a daily basis?
This might seem kind of hokey to you, but I would suggest, just as a suggestion, that whatever day these 4 firms come up with 2 and 2, truthfully, well, you know Jeff, but to treat him fairly, the day of, we're doing a morning one, you take one to breakfast and the other one to lunch. You get to know them, even if it's after the interview, doesn't matter, because your input will be after you get to know them.
Okay,
And do the same thing for both days.
that
So-
would be apart from the formal interview?
Yeah,
Okay,
that would be you and the attorneys, going
Okay.
to breakfast, going to lunch.
yeah, spend a little time.
Because that's gonna mean a lot,
Yeah,
because you have to work with them on a daily basis.
yeah.
You know, so I mean, that means a lot, so that'd be my guess, is that if you were able to do that, schedule at the same time they're already here.
Yeah,
Go to breakfast, go to lunch, and we're not gonna make any decisions until
sure.
the
Well,
board gets together after that anyhow.
Yeah. And I was
And then your input would be critical.
and I was gonna ask what role you wanted me to play in that process,
Oh, yeah.
and that's kind of what you just talked about, so.
Well, I think Mike brought up at the last meeting, which I thought's a good idea, but I don't know how you feel about it, because it's your staff. But if you'd like to have Rondi and James there,
And I've talked to both of them. I told them that I'm gonna be at some point in time looking for their input, and I've left them out of the process so far. I didn't ask them to review these, I didn't ask them to rank them. I told them when we get to the interview process, or maybe after the interview process, because we may go through an interview process and the board may say, hey, it's a coin toss, we can pick one of these 2 firms. And then maybe staff can go out and talk with them and say, hey, which one is better, which one do we feel like? Whether it happens on the same day or at a different time.
I didn't, when we interviewed for a great general manager that we got, I didn't completely agree with the general manager meeting with staff. To me, it's like,
Yeah. I enjoyed the opportunity. I thought it was,
yeah,
I thought it was
I
helpful.
understand that, but I just didn't agree with that. In this case, because it's an attorney, my personal opinion is that when we do the interview, we have your staff there as well.
Yeah. So they get to hear it first.
They get to do equal parts of the
Yeah.
questioning. I mean, because they're just as important, they deal with it day in and day out.
Yeah.
But that's me.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, typically when we were hiring, a person that's going to be working very closely with our senior leadership of our organization, they should be part of that process. And I'm not only the interviews the day that we do them as a board, but if you do indeed have this lunch with the actual proposed general counsel for us for let's say we narrow it down to 2 or 3. I don't know if you need to do it 4 lunches. That's a lot of lunches.
Yeah.
But I would even be open to Rondi and James attending that lunch as well if you are. Is this just? I mean, they're going to be working with them just as much as you probably.
I think I'd get more value out of them attending that than the formal interview process, because I want them to be able to participate more. It's awkward for staff. Staff never feels that they're at the same equal level with the board, so it's hard to interject and ask the questions that you may want to ask. It would be easier for them, kind of, I'll say one-on-one. But
in my opinion, is I think some of the questions they ask would be pertinent for us to know the answers.
yeah,
They're going to ask questions from a whole different level
So-
to make us
Right.
conscious of it.
Yep.
And
So
if-
if you want to have them both, I mean, I
Okay.
don't, but I think for us, it'd be good to hear, and James doesn't have a problem with this.
Yeah.
I don't believe that, some of the other people might, but I don't think
Well,
James has
then
a
if
problem.
we're gonna do that, and I have no problem with it, but I do think that it kind of in the setup that we are in the boardroom, it does make it kind of weird to ask those types of questions. Now maybe, now that I've been kind of talking this out loud and thinking, for that particular meeting, if we have James and Rondi up at the 2 seats next to you, so they're actually asking questions from a position of authority, if you will.
Right.
But that's probably part of the problem, right? Is
Yep.
we're all up there, we're elevated, we have microphones.
They're out in the audience.
They're in the audience. They got to walk up to a podium.
Yeah.
So if they're up there sitting next to you in those extra seats, and then we're all engaging in our interview at the same time, that might be. The way I was going to suggest it. If you remember when we did the interviews for GM, we were like in a conference room,
Right.
and we had so it was a little bit more of a less formal environment. I don't.
Well, we
but
can have the interviews, these are closed session. Did you ask Jeff? I'm sure they are.
I have not had a chance to discuss it. I have no doubt that they're
But
close.
we can have them here. Well, I mean, we don't have to have
Yeah,
them there.
this room's kind of
Yeah.
small, but
Well,
I mean, if you put 5 board members.
Well, and that's what I started to ask the question: who do you want from the attorney side? Because if left to their druthers, they may come with a team of 12 people.
I would say
To shot
I don't care who they bring except for the general counsel, but maybe like tell them, hey, you're limited to 3 people or 4
Right,
people.
and I think we should limit it.
Yeah.
Because I don't do this with attorneys a lot, but we do it with consultants a lot, and they think strength in numbers. We're going to impress
Yeah.
them with how many people we
Bring
can
in the whole
have.
firm.
Captain Associates.
Yeah, and it's
Yeah.
that rarely
And they're-
helps you get to
yeah.
know an individual.
And their black
for-
suits.
Yeah.
Just put a little salt on it. for you.
So, okay, so I'll limit.
You remember that?
Limited number.
I like their IBM gray and black suit. Yeah. Well, we're hiring creative minds, dude.
Plus,
We go for the colorful ones.
but most importantly, the proposed general counsel has to be there.
The person we're gonna be dealing with has to be there.
Yeah.
And
And
off-
you're dealing with.
In many times, I think in almost all of these, if not all of them, they said their co-general counsel or their assistant general counsel. Sometimes Jeff is sick or he's somewhere else and Blaze fills in. So they propose that too. So we may want to find out, send your general counsel and your backup and maybe 1 or 2 others.
Yeah.
And that's it. We don't want to, because some of them say, here's the 12 people that will help support you. I don't want to talk
No.
about that.
Right.
Yeah, we don't need a whole room full of
And
little interns.
are we gonna, Mr. Chairman, also, say what kind of contract we should try and do? Like a 1-year,
Yeah, I mean, so for one, we know it's not going to go for more than 5 years without going through a competitive process
Yeah.
again. At the very least, we know that's the bare minimum. That's our district policy.
I thought it was 3 years. It's fine.
That's fine.
It's fine.
Yeah, and that's we don't want to change lawyers every other month, but
So Ben's got 1 year already? It's 4 more.
no, no,
I've only got 2 years.
he's an employee. It's a little
Yeah.
different.
I got a 2-year contract. If you want to give me a 5-year
I'm
contract.
kidding.
Yeah.
So, I hadn't really given that a lot of thought. I'm kind of open-minded to doing, like a 3-year with a 2-year extension opportunity. I think 1 year is just, it's going to take them 6 months just to figure out what the heck's going on around here.
Right,
So-
but my thought is on 1 year, is they're not gonna mess with you the first year at least, before you see what they can actually do and how much they're actually billing you. if you sign them up for 3 years, hey, our hourly went up, can't help that. I don't
Well,
know.
yeah, well, I think any contract that we sign with anybody should have some sort of like out clause. I mean, you know, it doesn't
Yeah.
necessarily have to be, you know, just because the term is 3 years doesn't mean that if
Right.
we feel like we're being unfairly charged or not served well or whatever, I think that we should have some language in the contract that allow us to get out of it for whatever reason.
I think this is probably a little premature to get into that level of
Oh, okay.
detail. We want to find the right firm, and then when we go into the negotiations, you probably all need to sit together and say, okay, how do we want to structure this?
Okay,
And we may need to get, if it's not our current law firm, we may need to get somebody to help us structure an agreement with our new attorneys, because you certainly can't have the new attorneys structure it.
Yeah.
can't have the old one
You
either.
can't have the old one, so, but we're getting ahead of
Yeah.
ourselves there, so we'll figure all those details out
The
later.
other thing I was thinking about though with regards to the terms is that, you know, if we did go with something like more like a retainer type of thing, can we get them to, based off of experience with other water districts, give us some sort of ballpark of the annual hours that they may bill? I know it could differ, and
Yeah.
then we kind of cap them, like say, you know, this contract before it exceeds whatever X amount of dollars, you have to come back to the board and kind of request
Yeah.
an extension to of the funds to get us to the rest of the year. Chances are we're going to do it anyways because we gotta have legal services.
Right.
But I think we need to have like a target of based off of normal circumstances. If they think it's 30 hours a month or 50 hours a month or whatever it is, you know, we kind of we come up with we annualize that number, and then we kind of put like a not to exceed type of thing there or something. Again, I don't know if that's a normal thing to do or if it's a wise thing to do, but
One of the firms, I forget which one, but they suggested that we don't begin the relationship with a retainer agreement because they don't know our legal needs. So they were more of a, hey, for the first 6 months, let's go on an hourly basis, and then after that 6 months, we'll review and say, hey, we think we have a good handle, and we think you're more 20 hours per month, not 60 or 80 hours per
yeah.
month.
I think I like that approach a lot. That in my day job, I work with, we call them service agreements, but it's essentially the same thing where you kind of prepay for stuff. And one of the benefits of doing it is you typically get reduced hourly rates and those types of
Right.
things. So, but I do agree. I think when we do have the negotiations with either the final couple firms or the final firm, we should have a discussion of, if we start off at an hourly rate for the first 12 months, can we come back in year 2 and discuss retainer type options?
Right.
So
Yep.
I think they'd probably be open-minded.
think
It's a
so.
win-win. We would get more, we would get lower hourly rates, but then they get kind of a guaranteed kind of revenue stream. So
Yeah.
it kind of works out well.
I had one thought as I was looking at this, especially seeing some of the distances, and I'll only bring it up here. Well, I might bring it up to the meeting, but
We probably will.
probably. You know, we have a trade-off situation here. Some of these offices that are far away need office space. We have an abundance of empty office space.
Yeah. I would caution you when you do things like that, when you start treating contractors like employees and providing space. That's one of the key criteria they use to determine whether it's an employee or a contractor is provisional office space, if you give them cell phones, if you give them business cards, if you give them all these things.
Yeah, I was thinking they could rent it. I mean, we're taking in money, we're spending money. It's not a complete trade-out.
Yeah, you could probably structure it in such a way that you lessen that concern.
Just a thought, if whatever you're gonna pay in Carlsbad, it's like you might as well pay it here. And
Yeah,
you have security, you have you have everything already.
yeah.
Save a lot of money.
Yeah, one thing I'd like to know from all these people, what is it gonna cost you just to attend a 2-hour board meeting?
Right.
What are you gonna bill us for a typical let's say
Right.
2 hours? You know, if you get the guy from Cerritos says, well, it's an hour and a half, 2 hours to get there, 2 hours back, you know, pretty soon it's like, okay,
Yeah.
we don't need that.
Yeah.
I assume all of them are gonna charge you travel time, but,
And is travel time typically at a lower rate?
I think it's
Wow.
at the same rate, you're taking up their time, so.
Yeah.
So that's why I thought, and you guys, I think the committee had brought up the issue of where they're located, that's why I included it here, is
Yeah.
that's
Mhm.
could be a considerable factor.
Yeah.
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 So, okay, so we're gonna, the recommendation, as I understand it, 4 firms will be taken through, 2-hour interview for each firm.
It's our recommendation. yes.
Recommendation, 2-hour interview for each firm, 2 per day, so we need 2 half-days, and we will require that the firms bring their general counsel and up to 2 or 3 additional folks, and that's it. And there'll be some involvement with staff at the interview and possibly before or after the interview to get to know them a little bit better.
Perfect.
Is that kind of where we're heading?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there anything I can get you besides that? There's 2 things I was going to get you: a 10-year trend on legal expenses here,
Right.
and to the extent that we can separate it from general district operations and lawsuits, we'll do that. I don't know, as you go back in time, they may not have been as good at separating it. I'll get you what I can, and I'll put asterisks to denote, not breakdown not available before such and such a year. And then I was going to get you that chart that shows comparison with our district and some of the other agencies. It wasn't all water districts in San Diego County, but I think there was 5 or 6 firms on there with some additional information. Besides those 2 things, is there anything I can do to help the committee before the meeting on the 15th?
And we'd like to get this done by 20 December or the end of December, whatever.
Yeah,
Try to get the interviews done before then, and then we can,
the interviews.
I'd like to do the interviews.
Yeah,
Maybe we actually get, if they're done by the 20th, we get together the last week of December
Yeah.
for us to talk about it and make a decision.
right.
It would be nice to have a decision made by the end of the year. And I know it's going to take 2 to 3, maybe even 4 weeks to negotiate final
Yep.
terms and legals and I mean all that stuff.
But a decision from our part
yeah,
for you to negotiate.
Right, yeah, understood.
So,
And
yeah.
negotiations can always break down, but assuming
change,
things
yeah.
go forward. Right, okay.
But
well,
yeah,
that-
I think if we do that by the first of the year, and then leave it in your hands to go negotiate the deal. And,
Yeah, I think that's a good target. I think that's
and I
good.
think spend a little more time with whoever we're gonna have to reassure you that we have the right choice.
Yeah. Would the committee members like me to start doing any, I won't call it reference check per se, but you want me to start reaching out to some of the general managers of other districts and say, hey, do you know the guy,
yeah, please do.
you know, one of these firms, if I know what agency they've worked for, I can ask that general manager, do you know this person that they're, and start to get that. You're okay if I
Yeah,
start
I
doing
think
it?
that's great.
Okay.
The interesting thing about Nossaman that really got to me today when I got the email was, how do they know my email address? I've never dealt with them before.
Yeah, it must be through Aqua.
They came right off of the records as to, that's guaranteed because of you,
Yeah,
because of us. Oh yeah, we're opening up.
yeah. The timing is curious. So,
Yeah.
okay.
And that's not necessarily a bad thing. If they're
Yeah.
really truly going to open an office in Carlsbad, then
Oh, it's not a
Great.
bad thing.
you know, I mean, sometimes it's all business based, right?
You want things back?
Let me take them. Well, you can keep
No,
them.
I
Just
wanna
don't
keep
share them. Don't share them with anybody.
Keep it. And have you or when do you, if you haven't already, plan to share the copies of the proposals with the rest of the board members because they don't want them to walk into the
I will probably
interviews
bring.
blind.
I will bring them copies to the meeting, and maybe you can mention at your report out, and we have copies of the proposals for you. So one of the,
Did you get 6 copies of these?
you know,
for
the
each
problem
one?
is for some reason we only asked for 5. So, but you may want to hold on to it.
I took my notes
You got-
on a separate sheet.
You're all good? Okay, yeah, because
I said, what if you didn't get enough of these?
yeah, and I don't know why I only asked for 5. I think 2 of the firms gave me 6. They gave me a 6th one, but not all of them did. And I don't want to unbind these and the copy them. That's a pain. We could certainly ask the firms moving forward, can you please send us 2 more copies because they have the digital file and they can send them a lot easier. But I'll take these back. If I think you should have them back, I'll get another copy made and hand them out. All right, making progress.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah.
It'll be exciting to hear some of the answers that'll be coming from all of them.
Well, thank you for saying that because it reminds me. I don't know what the board may want out of the committee in terms of questions for the interview, or do you want it to be just completely unstructured and ask whatever you want? that we may want to put a little structure.
Yeah.
The interviews always go their own way. During the course of the interview, an attorney will say something, and you'll follow that path. But it's nice to have some structure, so there's not awkward silences, or you didn't forget to ask something. I'll put some thoughts together if you want to put some thoughts together, because I think it would be helpful for the rest of the board, because you guys have a leg up on them.
I think a few of the questions that we brought up tonight were, and you brought up, were kind of questions.
Yeah.
But you're right, it's gonna take a life of its own, it's gonna
Yeah.
travel where we're traveling.
And some, I mean, like, there's
Right.
going to be questions I think we're going to have for our current legal counsel that obviously we're not going to have for everybody else.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, which is, when you interview people for positions at an organization, you always have to be careful that you're not asking different candidates different questions, and it's very difficult when you're interviewing in-house candidates, because you know them, you can ask them things that you can't ask the others, because you wouldn't think to ask. But I think it's a little bit
But
different.
they're not employees.
They're not
so you
employees.
can-
This is a contract. And I
Right.
think it's a lot broader what you can ask them. You certainly have to do it in a fair fashion. You can't single one of them out and ask him the hard hitting, and the next one you
Yeah,
give him
yeah.
softball questions.
But yet we will be singling Jeff out because he's got a track record that we can ask about.
Yeah. So
The
yes,
rest of them don't.
yes, and I would suggest that you take a variation of that very question and ask a new firm. So if you're asking maybe Jeff, why do you bill 1,000 hours a year? You can take that kind of same question, say how many hours per month or year do you anticipate a district of our size and complexity, so that you're both getting
Yeah.
at the how many hours do you think is appropriate.
mhm.
I'll try and do that, but these are pretty specific questions.
Yeah, yeah. So I don't know when to have Diane start looking at calendars. Do you want to wait until
Probably
the
the-
15th?
Probably when we have all the board together and we can talk about it. Maybe we could throw a couple dates out there
Okay.
before we leave.
Yeah,
I mean, it doesn't make any sense to do it now until we talk to the other three,
yeah.
and then again, then we still gotta reach out to the firms to see if they're available. So.
So for the interviews themselves, I would suggest an hour and a half is probably enough. You don't want it to go too long. And in that time, maybe give them 20 to 30 minutes to give a presentation. They may want to, and it may be a lot what you read already. It may be very different, but give them an opportunity to make their pitch, and then the board can get into more of the question and answer.
Yeah.
Some of which
I'd
will
like
be
to have at
guided.
least an hour for Q&A. So if we
Yeah.
do 90 minutes, then
Well,
30 and 60.
You,
But
you got 8 potential questioners
Yeah,
to 3 potential answers.
right.
That can take time.
Well-
5 minutes each is 40 minutes right there.
Yeah.
It's gonna take longer than that.
Well,
I think.
Director Martin, one of the things I think we're looking for is can the attorneys answer things in a succinct way? So if you ask them a question and they expound for 30 minutes on one question, that may not be the guy for you. And that's one of the things we use in interviewing staff or potential staff members. If they can't answer a simple question succinctly, that's not the guy for us. So,
Oh, I agree.
and they have to, in a way, manage their own time. I don't want to have to tell them, okay, you've spoken enough on that. It just kind of points against them if they go on too long. So we'll structure them, my recommendation is we structure them 2 hours apart, but we'll really only plan for an hour and a half. If it runs a little long, we won't bump into the next interview. And it gives the board some time to take a little break between interviews or have a discussion. What did you think about that? Whether you want to do a formal ranking. One common practice that's kind of in vogue for looking for employees is you just rank them relative to the one you just saw. So the first guy comes in, he's number 1. And then the next guy comes in, is he above or below that guy? And then the third guy, is he above or below? So you don't have to give rigorous points.
That's
but you can say-
theoretically what we did with you.
Yeah, and that's typical what we do. And you may find that going through one round of interviews isn't enough. You may say, these 2 firms, it's a dead heat. And maybe there's another set of interviews, but we don't need to decide that now.
Right.
Hopefully, we go through the process and it's clear. Your candidate emerges. So,
Okay.
all right. Well, thank you. Thank you for your time. Anything else?
nope.
Will be ordered?
Move to adjourn.
So moved.